Good morning and welcome to our kitchen. I'm Gordy Galusha and my friend Sue Jacobs is here again today to help me along until Nancy can get back. She's has had a slight accident, but she'll be back in a few months probably.
Oh gosh.
So today we're going to be making a vegetable soup with baking powder biscuits and a Swedish apple pie. And I'm going to start off with my Swedish apple pie because it doesn't take too long to make it. The first thing you do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Now in my bowl here, I have 4 to 5 apples. I have 2.5 cups of sliced apples, and a tablespoon of sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon, and I mixed them all up and in a bag, and it was the easiest thing to do. And all you have to do is just put them in your pie plate. If you want a fast and easy pie recipe for the holidays that are coming up, try this one because it only takes 45 minutes to bake, and it only takes probably about 10 minutes to put together. If you have everything all prepped.
After you've gotten all the apples fixed.
After you peel all the apples, to have 2.5 cups of apples. Mm-hmm. And then you put a tablespoon of flour and a tablespoon of sugar in your bag, and you shake it up. And this is what it looks like for the bottom part of your pie. Now in my bowl here, I have 3/4 of a cup of melted butter. And I have also a cup of sugar, a cup of flour, a 1/2 cup of walnuts, and I'm going to mix it all up. And this will be the crust. You take clumps of your frosting, not your frosting, your crust, and put this all on top of your apples. If you want an easy pie, this is one to make. I made it just in time for my apples. I made them so they were still in good shape.
That's good. And because it's apple season.
Because it's apples. I make a lot of applesauce and.
Yep.
My son-in-law always asks for it without sugar.
Oh, that's how I make it usually. I leave the peel on though. I core it. I cut it in quarters and core it, and then I cook it. And the red from the skin colors the applesauce kind of pinky.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Oh, it is. It's beautiful. I don't think it needs sugar, but
some apples are a little sour, so you do have to put a little bit in.
If you use the sweeter ones, yeah.
Okay, folks, this is the pie, and this is what it looks like when it's all together. And when you take it out of the oven, this will be one piece of crust on top. I'm going to put it into a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes, and then we're going to turn this over to Sue.
Well, thank you, Gordy. So, as Gordy mentioned, we are making a vegetable soup, otherwise known as everything but the kitchen sink. So I started out with some oil in the pan and added some onions and celery and carrots. I think the fancy chefs on TV call it mirepoix.
Well, whatever it is, it's good.
It smells wonderful. And when that was just about softened up, I finely diced up 3 cloves of garlic, because we like garlic at our house. You can use less, you can use none. That's one of the nice things about this recipe, because you can tailor it to what you all like. And so everything is nice and tender right now. And so I'm going to add, you can add the chicken stock. You can add just water. I happen to I have a vegetarian chicken broth powder, and I like to use this. And so once I put some water in here, the recipe calls for about 4 cups. It depends on how large a batch you're going to be making. Gordy, may I have a spoon, if you could get one? Thank you so much.
I have a colander here for you to drain your potatoes.
I'm not going to drain them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but leave it, because I have a tip for people.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a good thought. So this recipe also calls for diced potatoes, and I pre-cook these. I've learned over the years that if I dice up potatoes and put them in the soup and wait for them to be cooked, all the veggies are going to be soft and mushy. So I pre-cook the potatoes and I put those in as is with the water. But if you decide you don't want to put the potato water in there, then here is a thought. A lot of folks know that I have a dairy allergy. Okay. So I've had to figure out ways of making substitutions, and I have found that using potato water, instead of draining it down the sink, I've used potato water when I make yeast bread, or for biscuits or coffee cakes or things like that. It really actually adds quite a bit to the recipe. And I prepped some snow peas. So I put snow peas in there, and zucchini and yellow squash. Like I said, it's everything but the kitchen sink. And mushrooms. I'm going to stir that up a bit. Oh my goodness, that looks so good. It's so colorful. It's so colorful. And a can of green beans with the liquid. So I suppose you might be able to call this semi-homemade. A can of corn with the liquid. Excuse me, when you open the can, sometimes you get a piece of the wrapper on there. A can of diced tomatoes, and our pot is almost full. And we like black-eyed peas and red kidney beans. I hope everybody here is hungry, because this is a big pot of food. All right, so I'm going to stir that up. Now for seasonings, I add, and there's also one more thing that's going to be going in there. For seasonings, I use salt and pepper, of course. Basil to balance the tomatoes. So probably a good spoonful of basil or a little more. And finely sliced cabbage, thinly sliced, not finely, thinly sliced cabbage. which I will attempt to do now. This is a crunchy fresh cabbage. Take the core out of there. And when I say thin, you want to get it as thin as you can. So one of the really nice things about this soup, and they do have the recipe here, is that you can tailor this to whatever your family likes. If your family doesn't care for cabbage, don't use it. If your family doesn't like black-eyed peas or red kidney beans, I have a son who will not eat anything with red beans in it. So don't use those. You can use potato, which I added. You can use rice. You can actually add pasta, but I've not been using pasta only because I make such a big quantity that the pasta gets mushy after it sits in the broth for a while. So there's a quarter of a small cabbage that I've thinly sliced, and I'm going to add that in there. But you know, so I try to stay away from the pasta. You can put meat in it. You can just tailor it to whatever your family enjoys. I've got on a tray here just a few things of the celery, carrot, snow peas, red potatoes, a zucchini, garlic, mushrooms. You just saw me chopping the cabbage. And so this is going to simmer for probably, I'm going to guess, if I can turn the heat up just a little bit, about 25 or 30 minutes. You want your vegetables to be tender crisp rather than mushy. And just toward the end, I will be adding some Swiss chard. So last night I took the last of the Swiss chard out of my garden, and I'll be dicing that up. I'll be taking the stem out of it and chopping up the leaf and adding that at the end. I've found that, spinach is good, but spinach tends to get kind of mushy after it doesn't take long to get really soft. And we like a vegetable, a leafy green that's got a little more body. So the Swiss chard or kale work really well in here. I didn't expect this pot to be quite so full. All right, so we're going to let this simmer. And when Gordy's pie comes out of the oven, then we will be putting together some baking powder biscuits. So we'll be right back. Hi. So the soup is doing really well, bubbling wonderfully. And I forgot to mention before we left this, took the last break, that I did chop up some fresh parsley and throw in there. And now that the soup is just about done, I have chopped up some Swiss chard, and I'm going to put that in and let that soften up and finish cooking. Oh, that is so colorful. It just looks so healthy.
Warms the cockles of your heart.
Oh, it does warm the cockles of your heart. So, like, you know, it's a everything but the kitchen sink soup, but it's a wonderful testament, a wonderful celebration for fall. with all the great vegetables and things that we have in abundance around here.
That you took out of your garden.
Well, a lot of it came from a garden. Yep, the Swiss chard and the garlic and the carrots. Yep. So I'm going to turn this down, and now we're going to start the biscuits. So as I mentioned earlier, I have to be careful with my diet. So I have found that in place of real butter, which of course tastes wonderful, I use something called Earth Balance. And Earth Balance is a non-dairy milk butter substitute. So I added the butter all chunked up into a bowl with flour and baking powder and salt. And I've got my pastry blender, and I'm just going to blend that in till it's a rough, coarse crumb consistency. And then I'm going to be adding a liquid to that. So, of course, I don't have the liquid handy. I've melted the butter in that, or Gordy melted the butter for me in that measuring cup. So I'm going to have to get some water, which I have a jug under the counter here, so I can use that. So one thing that I really like between biscuits and pie crust is to use ice water. But of course today I don't have any ice, but I do have water. There, so this is just a coarse crumb in here. And then I am going to add some water. Oh, look at that. The temperature's up already, Gordy. So I believe the recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of liquid. So it can be milk. Here's a tip. I have also found that if you use milk in your biscuits, use half milk, half water, and they will be lighter and fluffier than if you use all milk. Just a little tip. A little more water here. I don't want to use. There's the pie. Yummers. A little more. That should do it. So you'll notice that I just used water. I didn't use any milk in this at all. So I can eat them this time. Perfect. So I have some flour. And I'll turn that dough out. And the recipe, I can't even credit the cookbook for where this original recipe came from. This recipe book, cookbook, was given to me in 1964. So I don't know if any of you have cookbooks that look a little bit like mine, in that it's got a front cover, doesn't have a spine on it anymore, has the back cover gone, don't know what happened to those, and it's really pretty dog-eared. So I wrap it in an elastic band, and I've got it in a plastic bag to hold it together. But this has been a wonderful recipe that my kids have really enjoyed over the years, not to mention my husband. So I've patted this out. I think the recipe says a 1/2 inch. I like my biscuits a little thicker than that, so I usually leave it a little bit more, maybe closer to 1 inch. And I've got my very old biscuit cutter. I don't think there's much, well, other maybe than homemade bread coming hot out of the oven. Then a hot biscuit with butter or a drizzle of honey or some yummy jam. And this goes really well with the vegetable soup. Last one, I'm just going to roll up, except that it's sticking to my hands here. Roll it up, put it on the pan, an ungreased pan, please. And you pop it into a 450-degree oven, and it cooks for about 12 to 15 minutes, and then we will sit down and have, oop, forgot to brush it. Then we'll sit down and we will have some wonderful soup and biscuits and apple pie for dessert. That will be the best lunch ever, Gordy. There we go. Pop these in the oven, and we will be right back. Hi, and welcome back to our table. Today we made a vegetable soup in celebration of fall, and baking powder biscuits, and Gordy made a pie. So in my vegetable soup, I started in a large kettle with some oil, and I sauteed some celery and carrots and onion. And when that was soft, I added some finely diced garlic or finely minced garlic. And then I added some water. You can use water, you can use chicken broth, you can use any kind of liquid, not milk though, that wouldn't be very good. And then I just added a whole lot of stuff. I added a can of black-eyed peas and red kidney beans that I had drained and rinsed, a can of green beans with the liquid, a can of corn with its liquid, a 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes, and I sliced up two small zucchini, a small yellow squash. I put some snow peas in that I had trimmed and cut in half, and a quarter of a small head of cabbage, thinly sliced. I also pre-cooked some small red potatoes that I had diced up and added those to the pot along with the cooking water. And lastly, I added basil and parsley and fresh chopped parsley and some Swiss chard, and let that cook a little bit longer till the Swiss chard was nice and soft, and the vegetables hopefully will be tender crisp. I also made some baking powder biscuits to go with our vegetable soup, and these are, it's an old recipe from a very old cookbook that I have, and it just calls for 2 cups of all-purpose flour and some baking powder, salt, some butter or margarine that you cut in with a pastry blender, and then I used ice water. The original recipe called for milk, but as I mentioned earlier, a tip to make lighter, flakier biscuits is to use half water and half milk, or all water in this case, so I can eat them. Bake them after I rolled and cut them. I'll put them on an ungreased baking sheet and bake them at 450 for about 12 to 15 minutes, and they'll be a nice addition to the soup.
Today I made a Swedish apple pie, and this is what it looks like. And it's very easy to make, and if you want a very fast, easy pie for your Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or any kind of a big dinner that you're going to have, try this pie. I guarantee you'll love it. What I did was I sliced up 2.5 cups of apples. I used Macintosh apples, and a tablespoon of sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon. And I mixed it all together with the apples, and I laid them on the bottom of my pie plate. On the top, I put 3/4 cup of melted butter with sugar and flour and a half a cup of walnuts and a little pinch of salt, and I mixed it all together and put it on top of the apples. And I baked it in a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes. And if you would like any of these recipes, please send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Dalton Community Cable, 151 Park Avenue, Dalton, Mass. 01226. And that's all from our kitchen today. And please have a wonderful Thanksgiving.